Which of the following comes under non-probability sampling method? Your options are simple random sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, quota sampling, and all are non-probability sampling methods. The correct answer is quota sampling. Why I am discussing this question? Because it was asked in CRP 9 marketing main examination of IBPS. So hello and welcome to Specialist Officer. My name is Ankit Pandey and today's topic is sampling and sample selection methods. So let's start. First of all, we need to understand what is sampling. Sampling is the process which aims to decide who and how many people are to be interviewed. When you are undertaking any research, then you must have a research problem which is defined in the very first step of research process, and to find the solution regarding that problem, you need to interview some relevant people in order to draw some inferences or conclusion at the end. The entire population through which a sample is chosen is called as universe. So this is one terminology. The entire population is called as universe. A sample frame is chosen next, which is nothing but the list of all those within the universe who can be sampled. So sample frame can be called as a subset of universe. For example, if you want to analyze the academic performance of college going students in your town, then if there are 100 colleges in your town, then that will be called as universe. And if you want to select some 60 or 65 colleges out of those 100 colleges, then that will be called as sample frame. After sample frame, then it is always progressive to decide sample size, as the entire frame cannot be interviewed by the researcher. So if you are selecting 60 to 65 colleges and you have already made a sample frame, then you have to decide how many students are to be interviewed out of those 60 to 65 colleges. 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 number of students that you have to decide, and that will be your sample size. The larger the sample size, the lesser the sampling error. But you have to look after the cost constraints as well. So in short, you have to make a proper balance between the cost considerations of your research process as well as sample size. One more thing, whatever the sample size you are selecting, it must represent all the attributes of your population, that is universe. This sample size will represent this universe. So if you want to analyze the academic performance of college going students, then you have to select the excellent performers, the good performers, the average performers, as well as the below average performers too. In this way, your sample size will represent this entire universe. So your sampling must be objective rather than subjective. What is subjective? Subjective means when the same research is conducted by some another researcher, he will generate a different answer than the one who has already conducted the research before. That is subjective. Answers are different. There is a little bit biasing in sampling. But in objective kind of sampling, the conclusions are always same, irrespective of who is conducting the research. Here the sample size has been determined. Now you have to decide how these samples are selected for response, how you can select these samples. So generally we have two sample unit selection methods. One is probability sampling method and second is non-probability sampling method. Here we have the classification of sample selection methods. Probability sampling method, which carries 4 types. One is simple random sampling, second is systematic sampling, third is stratified sampling, and fourth is cluster sampling. Similarly, we have non-probability sampling methods, which are of 4 types: convenience sampling, judgment sampling, quota sampling, and snowball sampling. So non-probability sampling method has 4 types, and one of them is quota sampling, which was the answer of the question which I asked you in the very beginning of this video. So let's discuss them one by one in detail. First one is probability sampling methods. When every sampling unit has an equal probability of being selected. The selection of every sample unit is independent of the person who conducts the survey. These are the two important points regarding probability sampling method. So here we have sample size of 30. Now if I have to select one out of these 30 sampling units, I can pick any one. I can pick 13th one, I can pick 25th, I can pick 28th. So every unit has equal opportunity of selection. So if I am randomly picking these units one by one, for example, if 7 I have picked, then the probability of selecting any unit in the very first stage will be 1 by 30. So 7 is out here. Now there are remaining 29 units inside. Then the probability of selection will be 1 by 29. In this way, each and every sampling unit is having equal opportunity of selection. This is called as simple random sampling. We have simply assigned numbers to individuals and we are picking them one by one until the last number. So simple random sampling is each individual in the sampling frame is given a number. These numbers are drawn at random until the sample is complete. Thus, everyone in the list has an equal chance of selection. Now next is systematic sampling. Let's understand the concept first and then we will discuss the theory part. So suppose we have a sample frame of 30 sample units here and we have to pick these sample units for interview. So what we used to do in simple random sampling, we were drawing these sample units at random one by one, and we don't know the standard format. We don't know exactly which sample unit we have to select. We were just randomly picking. We can pick 10, we can pick 24, like that. But in systematic sampling, we have to decide a fixed periodic interval between two samples. Starting point will be anything, it could be anything, but the next unit which we will select must follow a fixed periodic interval. So how you can calculate that fixed interval? By dividing your population, total population, that is 30, by your desired sample size. So that desired sample size is to be decided by the researcher only. So if you want to convert this whole sample size or sample frame into a desired sample size of 10, then you have to divide 10. You will get how much? 3. That means you have to select every third element in this population. Starting point could be anything. It could be 1. If you are selecting 1, then you will have to select the third element. That is 2, 3 and 4. Next element will be 4. Then next element 1, 2, 3. Next element will be 7. Then next element will be 10. And so on you have to select. It all depends on your starting point. If you select your starting point as 3, if you start with 3, the next element will be 6. After that 9. After that 12. And so on up to 30. What will be the last element? Last element here will be 30. And what will be the last element here? 28. So in this way you can convert this population into a desired sample size of 10. Here you will get 10 elements. There is one drawback in this method. Suppose if you go with this pattern, then you are missing some items in between this, like 2 you are missing, then 3 you are missing. For example, if you have manufactured 30 television and you have to find out how many defective pieces are there. Okay, so it may be possible that 2 and 3 are defective, but you cannot detect in this pattern. But yes, in this pattern you can detect one defective television, that is 3, but still you are missing 2. So there is a disadvantage in systematic sampling, but yes, to make it quickly for larger population, it is very convenient. And systematic sampling is much better and refined as compared to simple random sampling because that was hit and trial method. Randomly you are picking any element from this population. So in terms of accuracy, that answer could not be right if you are doing simple random sampling. But yes, if the population is less, then definitely it is going to give you the correct answer. But still the better version is systematic sampling. Sample unit is chosen by random starting point but with a fixed periodic interval. So starting point could be anything, it could be random, like we have selected 1, we have selected 3, but fixed periodic interval was there, that is of 3. This fixed periodic interval is called as sampling interval. And how we calculated that sampling interval? By this formula. The interval is calculated by dividing the population by desired sample size. So what was the population? The population was 30 and the desired sample size was 10. In this way we got to know that our sampling interval is 3. So this is the formula. I equals to capital N upon small n, where capital N denotes size of population, small n denotes desired sample size. Next is stratified sampling. The population of sample size is broken into mutually inclusive heterogeneous groups called as strata, which are based on age, gender or income, and samples are drawn at random from each group. Now suppose if you have to analyze the academic performance of the college going students, then in your sample size you got some toppers, T for toppers. These are above average students, that is AA. These are below average students, that is BA, and these are average students. So suppose we have only these 4 categories with us. If you have to apply stratified sampling in this sample size, then how will you pick your sampling units for interview? Just divide this group into mutually inclusive heterogeneous groups. So for intra-group means within the group they are mutually inclusive. For intergroup, from one group to another, these are heterogeneous groups. So you have to divide your sample size in this type. So these groups will be called as strata. T is one strata, AA is one strata, below average is one strata, average is one strata, which are based on age, gender or income. So if your problem is related to your demographic, then you can divide it on the basis of age, gender or income. And samples are drawn at random from each group. So I will pick one sampling unit from topper group, then one sampling unit from above average group, one sampling unit from average group, and one sampling unit from below average group. See, this sample size is having all the attributes of this group. One student from topper category, one student from above average category, one student from average category, and one student from below average category. And these individuals will be interviewed further. So samples are drawn at random and each individual is getting equal opportunity of selection. Next we have cluster sampling. It is just opposite of stratified sampling. The population of sample size is divided into mutually exclusive homogeneous groups called as clusters, and random samples are collected from each group. So in cluster sampling, such mutually exclusive but homogeneous groups are formed. These are mutually exclusive. Within the group, there are different category of students like topper, above average and all. Intra-group is mutually exclusive. When we go from one group to another, then that is homogeneous. All the groups are same. So these clusters are quite natural. In cluster sampling, the groups are formed in natural way. Now how you will pick your respondents? For this, you have to choose one of these clusters. Suppose I am selecting this one. So what you can conclude from this new group? This new group represents the entire sample size. So this is the basic difference between cluster sampling and stratified sampling. In stratified sampling, we have mutually inclusive heterogeneous groups. But in cluster sampling, we have mutually exclusive homogeneous groups. Now, so far we have discussed about probability sampling methods. Now coming to non-probability sampling methods. Just opposite. When every sampling unit does not have an equal probability of being selected, the researcher is biased in selecting the sampling unit. So you can say that probability sampling method is quite objective, but non-probability sampling methods are quite subjective because biasing is there. First one is convenience sampling. The researcher selects the most easily available sampling units for investigation from the population and interviews them. So as a name suggests, it is convenience. The researcher always see his or her convenience, how easily the sample units are available to them. Only they will get interviewed, rest of the units will be missed out. Next one is judgment sampling. The researcher uses judgment. Judgment means past experiences to select sample units from whom appropriate information can be gathered. So as per the researcher's judgment, if any strong candidate is disqualified, then this may lead to sampling error. So being judgmental is also sometimes biasing. In quota sampling, there is no sample frame, but percentage of population that falls in various groups like age, income, gender is known. This is a general definition or general theory you can say. For example, if you want to determine how many people drink tea and coffee and you have a sample size of 100. Suppose you manage to get list from your nearest tapris and hotels of those people who drink tea and coffee on daily basis. So if you have that data, that means you have a population. So suppose you have names of 100 people, out of which 60 are males, okay, and 40 are females. So you can say that in a population of 100, 60% are male and 40% are female. The percentage of population is already known to you on the basis of gender. In this case, the sample units are selected on the basis of certain percentage. So here we have 60% male, 40% female. It's not possible for you to interview 60 males and 40 females, suppose. Then what you will do? You will divide them in equal proportion. You will interview 30 males and 20 females. See, the ratio is not changing. In this case also the ratio is 3:2, and in this case also the ratio is 3:2. You have not changed the ratio. You have selected your sample units on the basis of certain percentage, that is 50%. Every sample unit does not get equal opportunity of selection. You will interview only 30 males. Rest of the 30 males will be missed out. Here in this case you will interview only 20 females. The remaining 20 will be missed out. No equal opportunity. So this is called as quota sampling. You decide the quota of those sampling units or individuals which are to be interviewed. Now coming to snowball sampling, this is the last non-probability sampling method. This method is used when you have no idea about sampling units. Sampling units कहाँ से मिलेगी ये आपको पता ही नहीं होता है. Suppose if you want to identify how many people in your local area have kitchen gardens, and unfortunately the place where you are living, no one has kitchen garden, then how will you approach such people? You will ask your neighbor, you will ask someone to get the reference. You will ask your friend and he will say that Mr. A has kitchen garden. In this way you got your first reference. Okay. Now you will ask A, do you know people who have kitchen gardens like you in their houses? So he will suggest you two more, B and C. Yes, these two are my friends. They also have kitchen garden. So B and C will suggest two more friends who have kitchen garden in their house. That is D, E, F and G. Then you will approach these four people. They may suggest three more persons who have kitchen garden. So in this way you are making a network. You need a network in snowball sampling. And in this way you will collect these sample units, these individuals, and then you will interview them. A sampling technique in which the existing sample unit chooses future sampling unit from among their acquaintances. Thus the sample grows like a rolling snowball. So that's all for today's lecture. Subscribe to my channel, press the bell icon, share the video, and for queries and doubts related to marketing, contact me on specialistofficerforyou@gmail.com. This is my email ID. Thank you.